Hi friends, it's Auntie Cuckoo, and it's Monday. It's about 3 o'clock. All the kids are home from school, so you know what time it is. It is time to make dinner. So I am making my version of a recipe I came up with about 8 to 10 years ago. I call it chicken tortilla soup. I'll probably call it something different in the title because it isn't a traditional tortilla soup. It's just a recipe I came up with and has become a family favorite. So we are going to need a few things. You're going to need a very large pot like this. I have it already filled with water. This is one of those large, I think they're 20-ounce cans of crushed tomatoes. Mine is in a container because I accidentally opened the can when I was making chili and I did not need it, so I just stuck it in the fridge a couple days ago. We are going to be making Mexican rice as part of this recipe, and so you will need some rice and some tomato sauce or paste, whichever you prefer. I've diced up a whole stalk of celery, a medium white onion, a nice little chickie chick, so we'll name her, what should we name her? Call her Bertha, Big Bertha. So we're going to cook Big Bertha, and she's just a whole chicken. And then once we're done with all of our soup and making our rice separately, we will add to our soup some corn. This is about 1.5 cups of frozen corn. I will strain out this can. It's 15 ounces of black beans. And this chicken stock, I use the bouillon rather, to flavor the soup. I also use it as part of making my Mexican rice. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and put my Big Bertha in the pot and get her warmed up and start off with our heat on high, get it boiling. I will add to that my onion and my celery and my 20-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, tomato puree, crushed tomatoes, anything like that. So this is what you're going to need. Additionally, we will use some shredded cheese to top our soup and sour cream optionally. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and pick up Bertha and put her in the pot with these three main things, and then we'll go ahead and I'll show you how I measure out my bouillon. Alright, I literally just dumped Bertha into her hot steam bath here and added the tomato puree, the onion and celery, and I'm going to bring this to a boil and then set it down to a medium to low simmer with the lid on so that it cooks really thoroughly and really gets the chicken completely cooked through. So I did give it a little stir, and I wanted to show you, you know I cook by feel and not by measurement. So what I do is I pour some of my bouillon seasoning in the lid so that I can eyeball what I think is going to be the right measurement. Now this is probably 2 big tablespoons of the bouillon, and I do it in the lid so that if it's too much, like when I initially poured this in, it was too much. So I was able to pour some back in to this big old jar, which I do pick up at Costco because I use it quite a bit. So I'm just going to stir this up and wait for it to boil, at which point we'll go ahead and turn it down to just simmer, and we will keep the lid on it. It's going to go for a good long time, and once that's done, we'll go ahead with our next step. I just wanted to show you guys the pot is now boiling. It did take a long time. The water was cold and the chicken had been in the fridge, and it took a while to get the temperature up high enough. So now that it is boiling, I'm going to go ahead and turn my stove down to, on my stove, it's about a 3 or 4 between there. It's just like this, just a low boil, and I'm going to put the lid on. And then next, we'll be right back and I'll show you how I make my Mexican rice. Alright, I'm just going to show you guys how I do my Mexican rice. I have a tablespoon of hot oil in my pot, and then I added 2 cups of long grain rice. I'm just going to stir it up so it gets coated, and then we'll take it over to the sink where we'll add in 3 to 3.5 cups of water, as well as our tomato sauce. Alright, so I have my 3 cups. I just did the 3 cups of water. It looked about right. I eyeball everything, and so for every 1 cup of rice I do approximately 1.5 cup of water. And so I'm just going to reach over here. We've got our soup still cooking here, and grab my opened can of tomato sauce, and I literally just eyeball it. It's probably maybe 1/4 cup, and it's mainly for color, and it does add some moisture as well. And then what I do is I have the rest of the can, so I will add that to our soup just for extra flavor and color, so it doesn't go to waste. And now what I'm going to do is get my bouillon and add about a tablespoon to the rice. So now I'm just going to stir it up so that that bouillon gets mixed in. It's anywhere from 2 teaspoons to a tablespoon, and it is the flavoring of the rice for sure. And so I bring this to a boil, and then once this boils, I will go ahead and put the lid on and then put it on low for 20 minutes. So we'll just wait on that to boil. While we are waiting for that rice to come to a boil, which looks like it's almost there, I'm going to do the trickiest part of this soup, which is I pull the whole chicken out and I put it in a very large bowl and let it cool off, so that I can strain through the soup. I don't like to keep the celery and onions in there whole, so I'll just show you that the next step. But for this part, I'm going to do it without the camera on, and it's tricky as you can imagine. Just do it as carefully as you can, and I'll be right back. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and lower my heat to low, and I've got my chicken pulled out, and that will go ahead and cool off over here. I tend to only add the white meat back in, and what I like to do is take my slotted spoon and go through the soup and pull out the larger pieces that have not broken down of the celery and onion. I do have this handy little thing that I picked up, I think at the Dollar Tree years ago. I wish I could find another one. And it just sits in this little container, so it's great. I can strain through stuff and then pull this up and then add back the liquid. And if the pieces of celery and onion don't bother you, then you could keep them in. Certainly, it's just how I do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And we've got our rice just started boiling, so we're going to go down to low, and we're going to go ahead and put our lid on. There we have it. I've strained out probably most, maybe 90% of the pieces of celery there, and what's left of the onion. Most of it dissolves. Chicken is cooling over there. I've got the rice cooking, and what I'm going to do now is go ahead and open the can of black beans and strain them out. I like to rinse them with water so that they don't have any extra liquid, and I'll add those and the corn to the soup. Alright, we've got our soup strained. I've pulled out probably 90% of the remnants of the celery. The onion cooks off, and now what I'm going to do is take this time to go ahead and open my black beans and rinse them with some water so that it's just the beans and not the juice, and then we'll add those and the corn to the soup. I have the corn and the black beans added in, and I'll just leave this to go ahead and continue to simmer down and cook. I have it on real low, just the absolute lowest it can be, and that's just to keep it warm and warm up the corn and the beans. There are times I add more corn and beans. I'll just have to eyeball it when I add in the rice and the chicken. What I'll do now is work on my chicken. I'll pull apart with 2 forks the pieces that I want to add back into the soup. Alright, we have our chicken all chunked up here. I just go ahead and pull off the breast meat and any other white meat and chunk it up using my food scissors. And I'm just going to go ahead and slide that into our pot. And we'll see how much longer. The rice should just be a few more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and plate it up and show you the finished product. I always used to add the rice to our soup, but it would get sort of mushy. So what I've done in like the last year or two is I just add the rice to the bowl, and then I just go ahead and I spoon our soup right over top. So it'll look like this once you put your soup over top of your rice. And then I wanted to mention, while I was waiting for the rice to finish, I added a little bit of pepper after tasting the broth. I did add another ½ a cup of corn because it was just a little too thin. It needed a little bit more in it. And I added another teaspoon of the bouillon just for the salt. And so always adjust that to taste. And what I do is serve it in a bowl like this. I'm going to go ahead and top it with cheese and sour cream and cilantro. We have some fresh cilantro growing out in the garden, so I'm going to add that, and then we'll serve it with tortilla chips. And we actually sort of use the tortilla chips as spoons and dip it right into the soup. There you have it. Here's our finished product. We have a little bit of cheese, sour cream, and cilantro on top on a nice big plate with some tortilla chips for dipping. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching how I make my chicken tortilla soup, and that means it's dinner time.